Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting for December 8th. It's 5:30, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. In response to COVID-19, we continue to hold our council meetings electronically. Members of the public are invited to attend and participate in this meeting of council by accessing the meeting, which will be live streamed on our Middlesex Centre YouTube channel. There are no additions to the agenda. I'll look to council for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. And seeing none, then we can now move to delegations, presentations, and petitions. And the big item here today, of course, is our budget, which is strictly provided under the staff reports section. The minutes of special council meetings held on the 24th of November 2021. Amendments for those two. We have the Blueberry seconder to adopt those. Councillor Cates and Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? And that is carried. Now we can go to the staff reports, and
we're going to begin with Tim Davis.
oh, sorry, I skipped one. Yes, thank you for that. All right, there is one item here. We have a request to remove holding symbols for the design of Phase 1 project in the municipality Middlesex Centre, and it's filed for Wild Guy Design for Happiness. Looking for Tim Williams. There he is. Hello, Tim.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. I understand this is a special meeting that's mostly for the budget, so I won't take up too much of your time, but it is an application to remove the holds on the northern portion of a property within Kamoka, just north of the Wellness Center. And it is sort of a culmination of a number of applications that have been before you, starting back in 2019 when we were able to all meet together, in the same room, in the old council chambers, in fact, when the rezoning was initially put into place. And that initial rezoning established three different holds, one for a site plan process to be completed, second, a noise mitigation measures to be secured, as well as approved by the local municipality. So that would be Middlesex Centre as well as CN, and then a vibration for the same, to the satisfaction of the same CN and the municipality. And we've spent 2.5 years with the applicant working through a lot of specific details on these pieces, along with staff, Rob in engineering and Arnie in building, and Michael as well, to get to the point where we are satisfied that these items have been addressed. And you will remember that on the late November meeting, 24th, I believe, council approved the site plan agreement. And so now with those three pieces in place, it's appropriate for staff to bring forward this report that recommends the removal of those three holds for the first phase, the northern portion of the what we refer to as the DFH, or Design for Happiness, lands and their project. So I won't say more, but we'll just end by saying that there is a bylaw on council's agenda for their consideration that removes those three holds on that northern portion. Thank you.
And thank you for that overview. I'll look to council. Does anyone have any questions or any clarification on this? Seeing none, then the motion before us is that the request by Design for Happiness to remove the H2, H3, and H9 holding symbols for the zoning of the land known legally as concession 2, part lot 6 of Middlesex Centre be approved. And I'll look for a mover and second, please. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Arts, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much for coming in on the meeting tonight, Tim. And We'll move now to item 6.2, which is the budget presentation. Our Director of Corporate Services, Tiffany Farrell, is going to lead the presentation from staff. And so welcome, Tiffany, and I'll let you take over from here.
Perfect. So through you, Madam Mayor, in front of you, you should be able to see the 2022 budget presentation. Can someone confirm that everything, that you can see everything well?
I can see that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So I will get started through our 2022 budget presentation. So our agenda tonight is the 2022 budget creation. So we're going to start with some budget funding, a little bit of information just on the budget process to begin with, then the funding, then the budget cost highlights. We will really concentrate tonight on the operating budget highlights. The November 24th meeting, and if you haven't seen it, please check it out on our YouTube channel, would have the capital budget highlights. And so tonight, if there's any members of council that have questions, feel free to ask. If not, we'll kind of go over that information very quickly. And then we'll have the summary and where we're going from here. So first thing that I want to bring to council's attention to the public here is this presentation offers just a high level overview of Middlesex Center's budget. This year for our 2022 budget, there is a full detailed budget booklet that is available in this agenda as well as on our website. And this budget booklet will be updated after the budget is considered by council on December 15th, where they will consider approving our budget, and then it will be finalized and put on the website as well. So please take the time to make sure that you're going through the budget booklet for the more detailed analysis, whereas this presentation is just that high level. So what is the budget? So we talk about this every year and every presentation we do about budgeting to really get the point across that the budget is a key planning document in achieving the municipality's strategic priorities. And our strategic plan was passed earlier this year in 2021. So the budget development, this starts very early, even before July, as noted here in the presentation. The directors, as well as council and the public, are always thinking about things that the municipality should be doing, things that we can improve in this municipality. So we love to hear from everybody throughout the entire year, not just when the budget survey is put out to the public, but this outlines our budget roadmap and how we start and where we finish. So we are hopeful that at the December 15th council meeting, that council will consider our final 2022 budget for approval. So what is considered when building the budget? So as you see on the slide, there are many different things that are considered. The strategic plan, our asset management plan and strategic policy, our long range financial plan, water financial plan, debt policy, reserve fund policy, development charge study, community services master plan, fire master plan, and our budget survey, so our public engagement. You will just see little bits of this in this presentation tonight, but if you refer to our budget booklet, you will see a lot more information and how the staff here at Middlesex Center tie all of this information, all of these different plans and hearing from the public into one final document. And the document itself is a little over 200 pages, and there is still even more information that we would love to provide. So consider this as one of our continuous improvement projects. It'll only get better from here. So at this point, I am going to pause in my part of the presentation, and I want to open the floor up to our two members of council that were on our budget committee this year, Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley. And I would ask if they could say a few words on their experience and some comments on the 2022 budget for council's consideration.
Thank you, Tiffany. First off, I just want to clarify one thing about the budget committee. This is regarding councillors, myself, and the committee 2 years in a row. Please feel free to take that up with Deputy Mayor Brennan. It's the reason we're both here again. Secondly, I became very aware very quickly this budget was not going to go smooth as last year's. And the treasurer's first comments to me were, "We cannot maintain this expense in the next few years. It definitely gets your attention." We started approximately a $19 million budget. As Tiffany pointed out to us, our tax revenue is approximately $21 million a year. The directors were able to get the capital down to $15.7 million. However, it is important to remember there's a $9 million carryover from 2021, which then totaled the capital budget of 2022 close to $25 million. One of my biggest concerns I have is the projected capital budget in the next few years, excluding any carryovers. For example, projected capital in 2023 is approximately $33 million. 2024, approximately $38 million, 2025, approximately 32 million. So basically, our capital budget projection is going to more than double in 2022 in the next 3 years. I think there's also important for taxpayers to remember, just because items are in the capital budget does not mean they cannot be deferred or completely removed. Some of the capital items are coming forward the next 2 years and going to require grant money to move forward with. I know staff work diligently and looking for grant money to pursue these projects. However, if grant money does not come forward, first to see some of these projects put on hold until grant money doesn't become available. Our remaining debt principal is approximately $18 million. Some of these items do not mature until the years from 2031 to 2042. What we do not need at this point is to add more debt. However, Old River Road is a good example of debt we may need to incur. Legislation does not come up on this road. Total cost of repairs to the road will be approximately $4 million over the next 20 years. This debt will be 100% funded by the taxpayers. Our new asset management plan is telling us we need to build our reserves to eventually replace aging infrastructure our nation cannot afford. The majority of our growth money should be going back into our asset management plan. One thing I do find frustrating is people saying, well, DCs are going to pay for that new truck. Problem with that is, yes, they will probably pay for the truck, which is needed because of development. However, when that truck comes up for replacement, it's not the taxpayer to put the bill. One of our big ticket budget items is always the replacement of our heavy trucks, including fire trucks. There are guidelines and recommendations regarding industry standards, the best common practice when heavy trucks should be replaced, usually based on years of service. I think the key words here are guidelines and recommendation. Nowhere does it say it must be replaced. A lot of these statistics are compiled from bigger cities, including American cities, where their heavy truck fleets are on the road continually and probably are aware of 50 to 20 years. A replacement criteria needs to be based on the condition of each individual truck, but let's focus on the age of it. We have an excellent maintenance staff and program in place. We need to utilize this more. Obviously, if maintenance costs are high on the truck, it's sometimes we focus on replacement. Normally, we look at budget distribution, we focus on wants and needs. Due to fiscal limitations over the next few years, the term wants will no longer be applicable, because we need to prioritize to essential needs only. We cannot maintain these costs and continue to be a viable municipality. This change needs to be adopted by council, directors, staff, and taxpayers. I just want to thank all those involved in the budget committee. There's been a great deal of time and work into this budget. I feel it's a fair budget considering the challenges of cost increases of materials, equipment, insurance, and fuel, to name a few, along with the lost revenue related to the pandemic. However, the one thing I cannot emphasize enough is we need to take a hard look at our capital projects in the next 3 years, as we as a municipality cannot just support them all. Also, I want to give a special thanks to Tiffany for making the budget package to council arts itself more simplified. So last year we struggled with the format. This year's new budget package was definitely a big improvement, and the complete document definitely flowed together. Also, new this year is the line of all critical budget information, so all council can see how it comes together, along with explanations of terms, where we are now, and where we're headed in the next few years. With this information, it's easier for council to get a better grasp on the future issues of the Middlesex Center. Thanks to Tiffany and everyone else that input us into the binder. With that said, I will now turn over to Council Arts. Thank you.
I would like to acknowledge and thank everyone that participated in the 2022 budget process. A special thanks to the patience Tiffany had when I would ask her to explain the same question more than once. Probably asked the same question last year also. The new system that we used this year was much easier to follow than the one we had in the previous year. My dog appreciated the calm demeanor I had reading this year's budget material. I was also impressed with the layout of the budget report we are receiving today. For a layman, this is the simplest an explanation if you're ever going to get out of the budget. I must confess that Councillor Shipley and I had conversations on what we're going to say tonight. It came as no surprise to us that we had similar observations and concerns. I attribute some of that to Wayne's Scottish ancestry and my Dutch origins. I was once told that the Scottish invented frugal and the Dutch perfected it. You could say that Wayne's comments tonight were part one, and I am part two of the same story. One thing that really disappointed me is that we're budgeting over $100,000 for vandalism incidents. This is mainly happening in our parks at night, And I hope the mindless zombies that are doing this realize how mature they are behaving. If you feel compelled to do something stupid, please do it on your family's property. I'm also beginning to question if we're gaining or losing when it comes to growth. Yes, there is increased revenue, but there's also increased cost. The traditional way for growth is for the municipality to take on debt, to expand services, to accommodate for the new growth. When a developer is ready to build, they apply for building permits. Attached to these permits are development charges. The development charges are fees that help us pay for the infrastructure that the municipality provides for the new development. The theory is that when the subdivision is completed, development charges pay the debt the municipality incurred for infrastructure improvements. Slightly more than 50% of the fees are for wastewater and water. I do not think that we can afford to continue in this manner. The numbers are getting too big, and as the economy contracts and building slows down, the time frame to repay the debt will get too long. I believe that we're at the point where we have to consider that if we need to expand our water and wastewater services for proposed new growth, that the developers are probably going to have to pay more upfront costs. And then instead of paying development charges, they will get development charge credits. I want to emphasize that I'm not talking about current subdivision projects that we already have the infrastructure in place for. This would help cut back on some of our capital expenditures that Councillor Shipley has pointed out in his speech and help us better manage our debt. And as Wayne has stated, just because an item is identified in your capital budget, that does not guarantee it will happen. This brings me to our development charges reserve fund. It is projected to have a negative balance for at least the next 5 years, peaking at a minus 11 million in 2025. The standard line that development charges will pay for it loses its charm if the reserve fund is continually in a negative position. I am neither for nor against development, but we have to make sure the numbers work now and for the foreseeable future. What we really need to do is expand our commercial and industrial base. I am comfortable with this budget, but the current capital projections for future budgets, I do not believe are sustainable. Thank you.
Perfect. So thank you, Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley. I would like to echo some of their words. First off, I thank both of you actually for being part of our budget committee this year. I know it's 2 years in a row, but I do think that there was a lot of benefits with that. And I think that we can look at that for the future and possibly having a term of council saying two terms, 2 years, not your council term, 2 years for each member joining the budget committee, because I do find that there was a lot of learning, and I find that the questions between last year and this year, I think give you a really good grasp of the entire budget process. The first year is always, there's so much information, and the second year, I think you both handled it like a pro. And overall, and I echo the words when they said thank you to the rest of the budget committee, and specifically for the budget document that you see in front of you with respect to the budget booklet. I want to put out a special thank you to our communication specialist, Heather Keprin, and Sean Miller, our financial analyst, because this was a complete team effort. And additionally, on top of that, Councillor Arts had alluded to this, we did have a new software implemented this year, Questica, our budgeting software. It was implemented earlier in the year and used this year for the first time for our budget, and it did streamline a lot of the processes and made things a lot more efficient and assisted us in getting to the point we are today, where you see all this information in front of you. And so there have been so many improvements, and that is the goal under the leadership of our CAO, Michael DeLulo, is always that continuous improvement. And we are on top of that when it comes to budget, and just expect more great things in the future. So jumping back into the presentation, considerations in developing the budget. Many of these you would have seen in the capital presentation on the 24th. And today I'm going to highlight a few more that are also highlighted in our budget booklet in a lot more detail. So we have the strategic plan. This is a common theme, and you will probably hear me say the word strategic plan a lot tonight. But tying everything into the strategic plan is what the municipality needs to do. The strategic plan is created by the community, approved by council. It was approved in 2021, and it directs how we're going to operate this municipality. And the budget is one of the largest planning documents as well when it comes to operating a municipality. So of course they need to align, and you'll find that it does align in so many places. This is just a small snapshot of how we align to our strategic plan. When you're looking at the budget booklet, you will find a detailed department by department, different strategic plan initiatives tying into our different budget items. And then the performance measures of how we're going to measure those year over year. So this is something that we'll continuously be improving on. And there's just a few highlighted here, specifically our sustainable infrastructure and services and our responsive government. So take a look at these strategic plan initiatives as it relates to the budget. And if you're really interested in our strategic plan, check out our website for the full details on the plan. Once again, engagement, it's so important here at Middlesex Center. This is the community's budget. And so we consider it in all aspects. During the capital presentation, we had a few items that we had noted, and tonight I have another one. So one of the comments was provided, building a sense of community connection. Equity, diversity, and inclusion. There's very much a sense of us versus them in Middlesex Center. And this is a critical issue that needs to be addressed so that all residents can feel safe and included in Middlesex Center. And this is exactly what I know we want in this community. Everyone should feel included. And that is part of Middlesex Center's initiatives for next year with our diversity and inclusion policy. So staff have been working on this. This will be coming to council early in the new year. And there will be mandatory training for all of our employees in council. We also have an idea for a rainbow crosswalk in one of our communities to celebrate diversity and inclusion. So stay tuned. I think there'll be some great improvements you'll see in 2022. COVID-19 pandemic prices. So as everyone is experiencing in their own lives, the municipality is experiencing this as well. So although we have received funding in the past from provincial and provincial governments related to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been very much appreciated and assisted us in operating during this difficult time, there are some increase in costs specifically with respect to our capital projects, things that aren't covered by the provincial government. And so these are impacting our 2022 budget. And you'll see when you're looking at the equipment and vehicle pricing of a 6% to 10% over 2021, that's a significant increase, a lot higher than the cost of inflation right now. Inflationary pressures. So that brings me to the next issue that we have. So like you have in your own home, the CPI is increasing. Right now it was 4.7% on a year-over-year basis in October. So we have a lot of these inflationary costs in the municipality, similar to you would experience on your own. A couple that I want to highlight here would be maintenance and fuel. Fuel costs are increasing, as you've seen, as you fill up your own gas tanks. And there's speculation that it could reach $2 per liter within the next 12 months. This is a significant expense for the municipality. We are looking at mitigating that with the implementation of a fuel or a fleet reserve fund. So stay tuned in 2022 as we look at developing this fund to help mitigate and to stabilize those fluctuating pressures. And also, when we're looking at many of our materials and supplies, similar to other businesses in construction, we do have a lot of construction work here at Middlesex Center, asphalt pipes, and they do generally increase higher than household items. Before I had the 7.7%, however, today we have news of it's 11.6% right now for the construction price index. That is something that you'll see our development charges being indexed for, being presented on December 15th at council for council's consideration, but we are looking at 11.6% increase now. So when we're looking at our overall budget increase, I'm going to come back to this, the CPI and construction price index, because these costs are increasing significantly over last year. However, our budget isn't increasing as much. So I want to say a big thank you to our staff for making all of this work, because this is definitely a process. And external legislation. This is something that I find people may not always think about with the municipality, but along with our day-to-day activities and operating just normally like we would normally do every day, we have new legislation every year that we have to make sure that we're on top of and that we're following. And this has costs when it comes to either staffing costs to understand and to implement, and it can have additional costs outside, such as different consulting fees, because as you'll see later in the presentation, not everyone is an expert at things, and we need to make sure that we're providing the best services for the municipality, and that sometimes involves hiring consultants, those who are the experts. So you're getting the best service and the best possible result that you can. And as spoken about in our capital presentation, vandalism and security costs, and Councillor Arts had mentioned this as well. The vandalism and security costs are increasing for the municipality. You'll see that there's some capital costs and some operating costs related to this. This is something that is a burden to the taxpayers in Middlesex Centre, and the costs are absorbed by the taxpayers. So all the properties will be paying a portion in order to pay for the vandalism. So at this point, I'm going to pause and ask if any members of council have any questions before we get into the budget funding information.
We don't see any hands. I see some shaking of heads right now. So I think you can go ahead.
Perfect. So thank you. So 2022 budget funding information. So budget funding. So we are looking at the revenue sources of the municipality. And what you would see here is property taxes. And I'll get into a little bit more detail when we talk about property taxes. And property taxes make up about 55% of our overall revenue that the municipality earns. Grants from federal and provincial governments. And at this point, it's about 8% in our budget. User fees. So there's the general ones. So revenue from services such as recreation, planning applications, building permits. And then we have user fees specific to more like the utilities. So water, wastewater, and stormwaters. And those are directly funded by our users. That's about 35% of our budget. And we also have other revenue, number 7 below on the screen. And those would be like licenses and penalties and interest, as well as our marriage ceremonies, some of those smaller items. And that's about 2% of our total budget. On top of those are actual revenue streams. We also have different funding that we utilize, mostly in our capital budget, such as the transfers from municipal reserve funds. They're considered a funding for the budgetary purposes, but it's not really a revenue for the municipality. It's an actual savings account, essentially, that we put money aside. And then we also have debt funding. Once again, not a revenue source, but it's available to municipalities to fund our capital projects. And we will be using some in 2022 for some of our larger projects. So property tax calculation. So this is our main source of revenue out of municipality, and any municipality for the most part. And how is it calculated? So very simply, it's your current value assessment times your tax rates, and which would equal what you pay in taxes. So let's get some more information on this. So property assessment. Our property assessment is the basis upon which municipalities raise taxes. A strong assessment base is critical to a municipality's ability to generate revenues. Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPAC, will deliver the 2022 final assessments to Middlesex Centre by mid-December 2021. And I would like to announce that we have already received these. So the assessments that you're seeing in this presentation are final. However, there's this is one of the things that we have as a challenge for 2022, and we experienced it in 2021. And unfortunately, we will experience it in 2023 as well. So as part of the Ontario government's fall economic and fiscal update, the province announced their decision to postpone the 2020 assessment update. So what does this mean? This means that there will be no reassessment on properties there was nothing in 2021, there'll be nothing in 2022 and 2023. So those property tax years will continue to be based on the fully phased in January 1st, 2016 current values. And no date has been provided for the next reassessment, but the earliest date could be is 2024. So that means property assessment for 2022 property tax year will be the same as what you saw in 2020 and 2021, unless you have a change to your property. And the examples of changes are listed below. So this is something that the municipality calls staff if you have some questions, but if you did have a change in your property, or you're part of like a growth, like a new property in Middlesex Centre, that's the only time that you'll see a change. Otherwise, it would be the same. So this is something that, as a budget consideration, that I really do want to highlight. This can have some impacts on the municipality. So reassessment related to value changes will not necessarily affect your overall municipal revenue. So when they do that reassessment, hopefully in 2024, it doesn't necessarily impact our revenue, because the tax rates must be restated. So if our assessment values double, triple, quadruple, we don't know what that's going to look like. What we would end up doing, we would still do our budget process the same as we always do. We look at what the needs are of the municipality, we determine what that costs, and we determine how we're going to fund it. And once we figure out how we're going to fund that, and if that portion is revenues, that's how we figure out our tax rates. So if the assessments are increased, the tax rate could be lowered in order to balance to that amount that we need to raise. So that's essentially how our taxes will be calculated. And I can't predict what that'll look like until I see the data. And that data won't be coming anytime before 2024. So these changes will, however, affect the distribution of the tax burden among taxpayers and groups of taxpayers as rates of change vary. So this was experienced in the last reassessments in the phase-in cycle on, say, our farm properties. And the farmers experience those larger increased phased in over the 4 years. However, that's where some of the burden had shifted to during that period. Until we see what's going to happen for the new reassessment, I can't predict what those will be, but it is something that we do need to consider as a risk or something, just a consideration for the future. Now, looking at our assessment breakdown in Middlesex Center. So this is our 2022 assessment breakdown. So the majority, as mentioned before, is residential properties. The second assessment breakdown, like the second, is our farm properties. Now, assessment, like I mentioned, does not equate to property taxes. So this is actually what the property taxes is by tax class. So you'll see here that the majority is in our residential tax class, very similar to the majority of our assessment. And then farm comes in as the second. So when you're looking at overall percentages, it's 77.4% residential is where we're getting our tax revenue from. And next up would be our farm properties at 11.9%. So that's assessment. Assessment is controlled by MPAC. The municipality receives this from MPAC and we apply it in our system. And then we take our tax rates, which are set by council, and figure out what your property taxes are, just for your municipal portion. So there are the three portions of your property tax bill, which is Middlesex Center, the lower tier, Middlesex County, your upper tier, and education. And all three are applicable on all tax bills. So what we want to highlight here is our tax rate increases. So projected for 2022 is 2.76%. And that is up from 2021 of 1.47%. So how do we compare? The reason that we have here in our presentation is the other Middlesex County, other municipalities within Middlesex County, is to ensure that you're seeing because Middlesex County is our upper tier and they set all of our tax policy. So all of these municipalities have the same tax policies. So we have the same ratios applied across the board. And so we are comparing a little bit more apples to apples when it comes to the tax policy. In the booklet, if you refer to some of our comparators that are in the booklet, those municipalities may not have the same tax policies. Their percentage for, say, our farm properties is 25% of residential. However, theirs could be a little bit different from the 25%. So that's where there's a little bit of wiggle room here. So I do like to highlight within Middlesex County where we land, and we are the second lowest tax rate in Middlesex County. So although we do have, say, a higher assessment base, we might have higher needs of our residents. We also have 2 arenas here in Middlesex Center. We have a lot of parks. We have a lot of open space. We have great amenities. And so you do have to keep that in mind, but we do have the second lowest tax rates in Middlesex Center or Middlesex County. Government grants. So as mentioned before, it's about 8%. There are a few government grants that we get as a formula base. And what that means is that we know every year what it's going to be. It's based on a specific formula and we can budget accordingly. Some of the information we get ahead of time, like the Canada Community Building Fund, which is formerly the Federal Gas Tax Fund. So we know that for a couple years in advance. Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, we get just the year before. And so that information is part of, it builds part of our budget, and it's the government grants. Municipalities in a lower tier have less government transfers. And so these are our main grants. We are constantly applying for grants here at Middlesex Center, but these would be our main transfers. So user fees, this is a general, and then next would be our utility. So user fees are charged by municipalities to recover costs for services, and it ensures for tax fairness. So those who are using the service are paying for it. That's essentially what user fees are. And so this is why, especially with our utilities, our water, wastewater, and stormwater is a user fee program. They are fully paid for by the users. And the water our water systems must financially support themselves. And this is a requirement of Ontario Regulation 453.7. And you would have seen earlier this year in, I believe it was May, that council passed our water financial plan as required under this regulation. Next year, one of our exciting projects is we are looking at doing a wastewater and stormwater financial plan. Specifically, although it's not a requirement that they financially support themselves, Middlesex Center's policy is that they do support themselves. And so we need to do a little bit more detailed work on getting to that level. Reserve and reserve funds. So what are they? So our reserve and reserve funds, they essentially work, as mentioned before, as like a savings account. We put money aside and we put it aside for specific reasons, and then we use it as required. The majority of our reserve funds are to support our capital assets. And so you'll see later in the presentation, we did have a significant increase in our reserve funds as required under our asset management plan. I'm very proud that this municipality was able to pull that together and that funding so that we are on the right track in order to fund our asset management plan. So this is just a nice graph that shows our reserve funds over time, and this includes all of our reserve funds. Although they are very specific to what they can be used for, this is all of them included. So some of these would be operating and some would be more capital reserve funds. And you'll see in 2024, they take a little bit more of a dip, and that would go back to Councillor Shipley's point with respect to our capital assets, and those large balances that we're going to see over time, things that the municipality, as you see, the funding isn't always there. And so we need to ensure that we are very realistic in our what we're looking for capital assets, and we do really weigh those costs and benefits. And then development charges. And development charges is an obligatory reserve fund. So there are fees that are collected from developers at the time the building permit is issued. The Middlesex Center is presently doing an amendment, and the 2021 development charge amendment study will be coming to council for council consideration on December 15th. So if you're interested in our development charges and see what projects are included to be funded by development charges, please check out that study. It is available on our website. And debt. So our debt is another source of funding, not a revenue source. So right now our borrowing as a percentage of our own source revenue is at a little over 10%, which is below, significantly below the province's requirement of 25% of our own source revenue. And so we're in a good place at this time. With respect to 2022, we do have two projects that have been identified for debt financing, Old River Road and the Kamoka Drain #1 storm water management. So both of these projects are going to begin in 2022. The debt will not be borrowed until the projects are finished, unless we need capital financing, such as like a line of credit in order to fund these capital projects. And so you'll see more information on this in 2022 or 2023 when that information comes to council, as debt is done by bylaw. This is currently our 2022 debt allocation. It does not include our municipal drains or our tile drain loans, which are a very small amount of our debt. This outlines the different projects and what they are, the interest rate, and if it is DC eligible. A good portion of our projects are DC eligible, and the maturity of each debt is listed as well. And then just other revenue. The municipality, we must look beyond taxation and user fees to other sources of revenue, such as interest earnings to help fund our programs. And Middlesex Center, we do review our fees and charges every single year. And you will normally see this coming to council for their consideration in November of every year for the following year. Our new fees and charges bylaw was passed by council in November. So please check out our website if you want to see and have more interest in learning about these different revenue sources. At this point, I'm going to stop again just to see if there's any questions before we get into our highlights.
Council questions? Pardon me, I turned it off, I guess. Deputy Mayor Brennan.
Through the Madam Mayor, Deputy, just a clarification on the residential assessment that you had up there that shows the bulk of the taxes coming from residential. That includes a 1 acre lot and a house and a farm. That's classified as part of the residential, is it not?
Yep, through you, Mayor DeVete, it does. So it does include that 1 acre and that home on a farm property.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Case.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a general comment, it really shows the number breakdown, really shows the need for commercial and industrial that we have. That's all I was going to say. Thank you.
there anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to the budget highlights in general government.
Perfect. So thank you. So let's get started with our highlights for 2022. So the big picture. So I want to start out with the actual numbers, and then we'll get into some of the highlights. So this is kind of the information I always want to know. What is our tax levy increase? It's 6.39%. And what that equates to in dollars is $1,289,807. And our tax rate increase is 2.76%. And the total amount of dollars raised by the tax rate would be $576,335. And the difference between those two numbers would be what we're raising from the assessment growth. And so that would be the difference of the 3.63%. And that's $713,000. And that's because of the growth within our municipality in our assessment base. So we also have a little over 40 million in our operating costs and almost 25 million in our capital projects. We also outline here our transfers to reserves and our transfers from reserves. And so that does include all of our reserves, including water, wastewater, stormwater, and building and development charges here that you'll see throughout this presentation and when they're being used and when we're transferring in. So the operating budget by department and just a year-over-year analysis. One of the things I do want to point out is our facility services. Although we started allocating in 2021 budget, more work has been happening in 2022. So this has been a process in order to better align for reporting purposes and overseeing our different facilities, which is overseen by our Director of Community Services, as you will hear from later in this presentation. So I do want to just caution, as we're looking between changes between 2021 and 2022, because of that change in the facility services and moving costs over, it's a little bit, I will say, wonky as you see the differences from year over year. So community services is where you're going to see the majority of that change. However, you will see a little bit within each department as we moved over different things such as our hydro accounts, our insurance on our buildings that we were overseeing, or any of our utilities, water, wastewater, gas. So you will see that kind of, it'll better align in 2023 versus 2022. However, if you would like more detailed information, please feel free to ask me and we can put something together for you. So this is just a nice graph that kind of shows year over year with a 3-year comparison of how things are changing. You will find that most of the departments stay relatively consistent each year. And our total budget breakdown. So another graph here to kind of get you a visual of what we're looking at and what our budget expenditures are. So I do really love this chart. It is our 10 expenditure categories that account for 90% of our budget. That's huge. So when you're looking at 90% of our budgets can be explained by these 10 items. And you will see here, the biggest is our transfer to reserve and reserve funds. So when we're looking at an operating expenditure, it is considered an operating expenditure. We take money from the tax levy that is raised each year and we transfer it directly to reserves. What are those reserves used for? I would say the majority are used for capital. And you'll see that later on when we talk about the asset management and how that increase in our reserve fund transfer assists in paying for our asset management and all those capital assets. But that is funded from the operating dollars, but it does fund our capital. Wages and benefits is our second at 23.2% of the budget. And then we have our subcontracted services. The majority of this would be your waste and your recycling. That garbage, waste, recycling is the largest part of that subcontractor services. Then policing and our debt payments, and you'll see as it goes down. One of the highlights, and you'll notice it later on in the presentation, is our insurance. There is a significant increase in our insurance year over year, which I'll get into a little bit later. So some more highlights. We always talk about our consulting projects, and it's very important that I find that this municipality is open and transparent and what this looks like. And I know consulting projects is something that is always of interest. And there are some projects I would like to say that although we have an amazing team here at Middlesex Center, we just can't do. We may not have be a specialized in that area or a specific skill set. or sometimes the capacity to complete the work. So these are some of those municipal consulting projects that you're going to see in the 2022 budget. You would have seen a few of these in the 2021 budget as they were budgeted, such as all of those master plans that are noted here. They were in 2021, but they're carried forward in 2022. We were waiting on the finalizing of the official plan before starting this, I believe, and so that's why those are being carried forward. And then there's a few other here, some of the ones that we're really excited about. I mentioned the wastewater and stormwater financial plans. That should be great. And the fire master plan. So there is, it's funded partially by DCs, but there is a grant application out for funding of our fire master plan. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting that grant. So operating highlights. So 2022 and 2023 MPAC assessment cycle is delayed to an unknown date due to COVID. This does have a big impact, as mentioned earlier. Insurance increases 20%, $133,000. So projected to increase over 2021 by 20%. As you'll remember, I believe is also 20% increase in 2021 over 2020. So we are seeing these very large insurance increases. This is happening throughout the entire municipal sector. Side note as well would be the cyber insurance. It's not just increasing 20%, it's looking at increasing 100% at a minimum. So this is something that we are working very closely on. Conservation authorities increases 17%. That looks like a very big number. However, I would like to explain that a little bit more in detail. One of the things is our St. Clair Conservation Authority and our Coldstream Conservation area that's just over here, right here by the municipal office. It was, the maintenance was done internally with our corporate or community services team. However, the Conservation Authority is taking that on in 2022. So although it looks like there's an increase of 70%, a good portion of that actually relates to work that we used to do. So you'll see the same decrease in our community services side for that same area. So it does kind of level out. Additionally, there's that dam study that council approved this year. I believe it was at our last meeting to do in 2022 with St. Clair as well. Very, very small policing increase of less than 1%. Reallocation expenditures to the new facilities department. So you will see that throughout all of the budgets and departments tonight. We have the consumer price index at about 4.7% and $1 million increase in transfers to reserves from the tax levy for 2022 capital initiatives. Our reserve funds did increase more than that, but $1 million was specifically related to 4 different capital reserve funds that are used to fund our asset management plan. So personnel changes. So budget model. We always use a zero-based budgeting when applying to our payroll system. So this is all built into our new budgeting software and with our HRS system, as well as our budgeting software, Questica. And so every employee is in there individually, and we look at from the bottom up when costing out any individual employee or hours. So it's all done every single year. Salary cost of living was 2% for 2022. Step increases are 4%, and we had 38 full-time employees eligible in 2022. We had 3 new or modified staff positions, 1 in the Public Works and Engineering Department, our Asset Management and Sustainability Coordinator. Community Services, there's a full-time, so we do have customer service assistants that are and representatives at our wellness center. However, they are mostly part-time, so 1 position will be full-time, and they'll have the recreational programming. So that's what the programmer is. So they'll do recreational programming, and our Director of Community Services will talk a little bit more about that in detail later on in this presentation. And building department, we have a building co-op student. So in the past, we have had a building co-op student before, however, it was removed in the last year. So it's being added back in to assist our booming building department, as everyone's aware. Benefits, health and dental, we do normally just increase at 5%, but it is an ASO model, which means that we pay for all of our claims ourselves. So if we don't experience that, we don't pay it. We will budget for it. And if we come under budget, that's where council sees those surplus reports at the end of the year or early in the new year. And that's, so we're budgeting for a 5%. At this point, we don't renew our benefits until March of 2022. And so we will see how that lies, but that is a realistic expectation based on the costs. New performance management module of $2,500. That's part of our HRS system. So here at Middlesex Center, performance management is so important. And we love to complete these every year and support our employees in this entire process that we're looking at moving into our HRS system. Right now, it is just a PDF form that we use, and it's more, I guess, staff time. It takes a lot more time. So we are going to go with one of our continuous improvement initiatives and get that in our HRIS system. So reserve transfers. Total reserve transfers, it increased by about 1.2 million, and it makes up about 31.5% of the total operating costs. So additional 1 million was transferred to reserve funds in 2022 to build the balances to cover capital asset requirements as outlined in our municipality's asset management plan. The plan is that $1 million for the next 5 years will be added in on top of every year in order to support our growing asset management needs. And this will help close our infrastructure deficit or that gap that we have between what we're funding every year and what we need to fund. So this is a great move on behalf of the municipality. And the additional amount being transferred to reserves can also be accounted for just by the increases in some of the grants that we're receiving that are in and out. So they come in as grant revenue and then they get transferred to reserve funds right away. So that's that difference between the million and the 1.17. And so this is also very important, and it goes back to Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley's comments earlier in the presentation when it comes to our capital spending. And I mentioned this on November 24th, I am concerned as we do have a lot of capital projects coming down the line. We need to support our asset management plan. We have agreements in place with respect to our developments and the different assets in order to support our developments. However, we are going to be underfunded, and the amount of money is something that we need to make sure that we're coming up with every single year. So if you're looking at our transfers to reserves of a little over 12 million, and the transfers from reserves, 23 million. So ideally, this number should be the same, or the transfers to reserves should be more so that we're building those savings accounts. Right now, we're spending more than we're putting in every year. Eventually, this is going to catch up with us. You will see that our reserve funds year over year have been building. A lot of that has to do with the fact that there's a delay, or all those carry forward capital projects, like the 9 million being carried forward from 2021 to 2022. It's just sitting in our reserve funds. It's making it look bigger than it really is, because once that starts happening, those balances will come down. So this is something that's it's a challenge for our municipality as well as many others, but it is something that we have to keep in mind, especially when we're selecting our capital projects and looking at the operations of the municipality, because the municipality, we still have to operate financially. General government. So overall, the department decreased. And so we have a lot of exciting and new projects happening. Many of these are funded by either a reserve fund or a reserve, or we also had increases in revenues in general government. And so you won't see an increase due to these costs, or they're funded by actual grants. So some of the ones I would like to highlight is that customer service delivery review and associated policy. We have a grant for 100% of the costs that we have put out. We have not heard back. So we're hoping to get that grant for that project. Organizational review, same thing. There's a grant out. Long range financial plan is funded by our operating reserves. The election, an exciting project for all of us. So I know council is looking forward to it, and our clerk is looking forward to that massive project in 2022 that we are all here to support him on. So that's $4,000 to $5,000. But we do have an election reserve fund that we put into place a few years ago. So that's where that's being funded. Cloud permit launch for development and planning. So we are building on that cloud permit program that we use for our building department, and we're doing it in development planning. And this is county-wide, one of those awesome initiatives that we're working as a county on. Continuous improvement plan. So another year of this $30,000 program that is run by our CAO. And so I'm really excited to see those projects that come out of it this year. As you will go through our budget booklet, you will see a lot of the great stuff that has happened in 2021. And I know there was a report to council earlier this year. So take a look if you're interested. And we do have the continuous, that was a continuous improvement initiative for 30,000. Community improvement plan also improved in 2021. Will continue into 2022. Completion of the zoning bylaw totaling 60,000 as well. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Colin. But first I'll ask if any members of council have any questions for me.
I see Councillor Coughlin's hand.
Mayor Chickney, on the reserve transfers, you're adding $1 million additional in 2022. So this is $1 million extra than what you would normally budgeted in prior years?
Yep, so through you, Mayor DeVee, that's exactly right. So every year there was a specific amount that we are budgeting for our capital assets supported from different reserve funds. So these are things like the fire equipment and vehicle reserve fund or roads capital reserve fund. There's a specific amount I was budgeting every year. This year I did $1 million more, and it's allocated between 4 different reserve funds. Those are specifically roads capital, fire vehicles and equipment, general vehicles and equipment, and buildings and facilities. And that is supporting our asset management plan to close that gap on those specific assets.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question. So the general government, there's a lot of different programs that we've been involved in 2021, and some more additional ones in 2022. So do you see this particular line of technology updates and all that sort of flattening out, like at some point? I mean, I'm sure we'll be continuing to find new ways to do things better. But would this be kind of flattening out, like would some of these programs be done, so to speak, in 2022? So we wouldn't be using them in 2023?
Sorry, so through Mayor DeVee, it's kind of cutting out for me to hear. I don't know if I feel like I'm leaning closer to my computer, although that probably doesn't help at all. So let me just repeat what I think it was, and if it's wrong, let me know. Are you asking if it'll ever like stable out between all of the projects that we're doing will start like kind of coming off because we've kind of achieved it all?
Yes, for the organizational reviews and the customer service delivery reviews, and that type of thing.
Yes.
So they would be coming off likely in 2023 with that.
Yes. So so pretty much I would say corporate services as well throughout the whole municipality, there's always so many projects, whether that's a new legislative requirement such as asset management or standard development charges. It is something that is led by the corporate services team. That's every 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Now it's eluding me. It's anyways. Sorry, but those are projects that we'll always have going on. When it comes to the different ones, when we're looking at like our customer service review or organizational review, those are all once they happen, we will have them in place, and then it's just maintaining it and then maybe doing a refresh. But I would say we always have this continuous improvement. And when I look at our like corporate services for 2022, for example, I believe we have 35 to 40 new projects or plans in order to accomplish in 2022, and every year there seems to be more that we would add on. Some are very small, some are larger in nature, but it is things that we're doing to just improve the municipality and things that, like for example, one of the things that has we will be talking about early January for say 2023 or 2024 is a new financial accounting software. Ours is very dated. There is, and it came up as part of that modernization, that grant that we received because we have allocated money from that funding that was received back in 2019. And I would say that there's always something that comes up, but they might not be as large as what we're seeing right now. But when it comes to continuous improvement, I don't know, I find that there's always something that we can always improve on. Although we are trying to slow down a bit, the amount of projects then are significant. And as you would have noticed in the budget booklet, there's pages upon pages of how we tie into that strat plan and those new initiatives within our department. So I am hopeful that in the future it's more maintaining, but I know we have an amazing team here that just wants to make some improvements and make things more efficient. And as our community continues to grow, our volume of customer service and things that need to happen, even when you're looking in the budget document and you're looking at all the hirings that were done by HR, and that's just going to continue to improve. So we're finding different ways. Like last year when we implemented the recruitment and the onboarding module, that saved a significant amount of hours. Although there's a lot of hours going into implement, we're looking at how can we make this more efficient. So that part, I don't know if we'll ever stop doing projects because there's always a way to make something more efficient and better and more cost effective. But we will, I am hopeful that the list will go down. But once, you are right, once we have finished a project, it's more maintaining. Similar to like, so the asset management plan, there was a lot of work that went into it at the beginning. There's still a lot of work happening in our public works and engineering and community services team and fire team, getting all those assets in to the new program. But once everything's in, it's going to be more maintaining unless there's a change in legislation or as we add in, like, say, our growth aspect, which would be new for Middlesex.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I just have a bit of a comment. I think you referenced the asset management plan, and I'm not sure everyone out here is really clear on what that is and how that works, but the plan, which lists all of our assets, and when they came on board, as it were, in our municipality, we've got a roadmap. We know what we purchased when and when we expect that it will expire or when it'll need a new roof or new tires or whatever. So we have a way of knowing what the balances in those reserves is. So before I started smiling, used to be like, wow, I think this will be enough. And gosh, I hope this is a lot of money, but I mean, really, it was like throwing darts at a dartboard in some ways, saying, yeah, we put a lot of money into reserves, but we didn't really have any kind of objective measure against which to measure. So I really take comfort in knowing that we've got that foundational work done and that there's a way of aiming for something that we know is real. It's not to say that something unexpected won't happen, good or bad. I mean, we have had compliments on how well our facilities are maintained in the past. The lifespan of some of our assets is longer than we would have originally anticipated because staff takes good care of them. But at least we know where we're wanting to head, and it's I think. So anyway, with that, I don't see any other hands opening, and we can take it to the next department. Thank you.
Perfect. So up next is Conto from the fire department, our fire chief and director of emergency services.
Thanks, Tiff. Good evening, council. Through you, Mayor. Fire department for 2022. We are definitely down in our net operating costs by 0.15%. And there are a couple significant and notable reasons for that. One of which Tiffany already mentioned, in that facilities services, we are finally finishing transferring a number of items over. And another big piece to that is our partnership through fire prevention investigation with North Middlesex and Thames Center. Over the past couple years, starting our program till now, we are realizing more revenue coming in than originally thought. Of course, this is ebb and the flow based on our risk assessment and risk inspection program that we do have. So an example of that is 1 year we may be doing a significant amount of inspections that take longer, such as industrial inspections of a larger building. Whereas the third year in our 3-year cyclical program, we may be doing more retail and mercantile, small commercial type buildings. So there is definitely an ebb and a flow. So that is definitely part and parcel here. Another important piece to note is our rate of growth. It's no secret that we are growing and quite significantly, and that also includes fire services and response. We have a lot of people passing through our municipality to and from different locations where they live, and over 2020 till now, we are already realizing an increase of 11%. So that's around the realm of about 50 calls as it sits now, and we're not done December as of yet. So it's also important to note that this is it increases operating costs. Wages are included in there for our firefighters to respond. And of course, there's equipment requirements for and to support this, maintenance, all those type of things. Requirements for fire service continue to mature. In past meetings and reports, I've talked about different regulations that are coming into play, and one of those will be part and parcel with our master fire plan for 2020. It's the community risk assessment. So this is a regulated item that is required to be completed and submitted to the fire marshal's office for review by 2024, early 2024. So including this with our master fire plan, they really interconnect, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Just jumping back to the master fire plan and touching on the growth. With this growth, thanks, Tiff. With this growth, it's important to look at how our fire services and our support are provided to our community, and not only that, to our firefighters in the way of equipment, staffing, and the support for that. And our last fire master plan was completed in 2013, and so that significant growth, I think it's important and responsible for the municipality to undertake that. Report management system. So we've been working on a new report management system, quite an updated system, allows us to do a lot more, track a lot more items, and provide more information should we have to provide it to different agencies. We're also partnering with Strathroy Fire Dispatch and the Police Center to integrate our report management system and the computer-aided dispatch. So what that really means is we are able to provide all that information to have that to the fingertips of our firefighters while they're responding and doing their pre-planning. The dispatch center, we're looking at about 20,000 for that. And that, I believe, we're looking at taking out of our modernization. So finally, a continuation of deployment of our fire prevention program. Like I mentioned, it's becoming very successful. It's a lot more significant and successful than I'd thought. So we're very happy about that. We do support North Middlesex and Thames Center. And like I said, we are realizing this 2020 more associated revenue with that, and we've estimated that at approximately $60,000. So that's it for our highlights for fire for 2022. I'm happy to entertain any questions council may have.
Thank you, Chief. I'll look to council for questions. Deputy Mayor.
To the chief, you highlighted the different reasons why master plan is required at this time. Other than a couple of regulation things that are coming forward, a lot of the other stuff, in my own opinion anyways, I think you have the expertise to provide us with that information and ongoing what's going to be required as we grow on. So I guess in the end, my question is that fire master plan really required at this time, citing your expertise in the field and what the master plan would actually give us. I'm not 100% certain that for $50,000 we're going to get enough out of it that you can't provide us with.
Through you, Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, I think, again, like I'm having a hard time hearing, there's a lot of echo and we're not getting full vocal through the mics, but I think what you're saying is that you don't feel that the master fire plan going out to that third party is effective, and a lot of that we can do in-house. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I'm just saying, Chief, that I think you have the expertise that a lot of the stuff that's going to be projected, what we need in the next few years, you could probably let us know that, and as well versed as any consultant's going to be coming in. And I say that looking back at the last couple of master plans we've had given to us, I still feel the contents there that the dollars we're spending, we're getting a good value for the dollars, that it could be done in-house. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mayor to Deputy Mayor, I appreciate the compliment that I have expertise. There are definitely some things that would definitely be a lot more time consuming than I think I would be able to provide, such as a lot of the data accumulation. But with that said, we are hoping to get that grant, and we can definitely look at that internal a little more in depth for sure.
Through the chair, that's a good point, Deputy Mayor. we'll definitely take that into consideration, and maybe once we define the scope, the fire chief is going to be the project lead, obviously. And once we define the scope of the plan itself, we can definitely take that into consideration in terms of what we farm out from an objective perspective versus what we can manage.
Other questions for the chief? I don't see any. Thank you, Colin, and I'll turn it back, I guess, to, or do you want to hand it over to Scott? He's next. Here we go. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to just got a couple slides here, going to highlight a few of the departmental highlights to start. So a few things that are on the go for 2022, and some are a bit of a carryover or a continuation of what we've started in 2021. We have identified, again, funds in 2022 to deal with the LDD moths that we did some aerial spraying of in 2021. We do feel this is an area we still need to continue with some sort of program in this regard. So we do have those funds identified to do a similar program to what we did as far as somewhere between 75 and 90 acres. And so staff are going to be going out soon to look at egg masses, et cetera, on various woodlots and identify those needs. As some of you may know, we've had a significant uptake in youth programming in Ilderton. We're working very closely at the moment with the Boys and Girls Club, and they have been very supportive and very helpful through this process. They have a key staff member who is out in the field looking at kind of teasing out programs within the community and see what kind of interest there is in that demographic. And it is it's very popular. It's actually been, the momentum is gaining. There was an obvious need that's been identified there. So we will be looking in 2022 at some additional youth programming in the Ilderton community specifically. Again, we've always said that what we do in Ilderton will act as a template for other communities in the future. So this is a bit of, I won't call it a pilot because it's not really a pilot. It's really just, finding the right, operational model for Ilderton. So next steps in this regard is we'll be working with the Boys and Girls Club in hopes for some sort of partnership agreement to, working with them and having them operate the youth center on our behalf. So very early stages, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but that is something that we are working on to increase that programming to the community. The introduction of recreational and cultural programming. As we've been going through the Community Services Master Plan, this has come up significantly through the survey results, public information centers, et cetera, that there's an obvious need there as well for overall recreation and cultural programming throughout the community. I've mentioned this before in past meetings that we've always shied away from entering that realm of direct recreational programming. We felt, based on what we're hearing now and coming out of COVID for other reasons, we feel this is an opportunity for us to expand this. Hence, the position that Tiff alluded to earlier. There is we are proposing a full-time customer service / recreation program assistant, where it will be a bit of a split position between offering support to the customer service desk down at the wellness center and being that recreation program piece that will be out in the community and offering these programs. I do want to note with that position, although it is a new position, you will see in the budget documents that there's a significant reduction in part-time hours when it comes to our customer service to offset that position. So it's not a full position. There is an offset there. It's not fully offsetted, but it's significantly offsetted. I already spoken to the new partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club. as many of you know, through our advisory committee, and some of you sit, and Councillor Heffernan actually sits on our project steering committee. We are working on our community services master plan update. Right now, we're looking to bring that to council about March or April of next year to finalize it. There'll be some check-in points between now and then. The stage we're at right now is we're just preparing the draft recommendations that will be going back out to the public for the second public information center. And then again to the advisory committee to make sure, did we get the recommendations right? Are we missing anything before we draft the final report? So I like where that project's going, and some of the recommendations that will be coming out of there will really set us up nicely over the next 5 years, and showcase the council where the needs are within the community in that respect. The other project that was started in 2021 will carry over. This is a grant-funded project, and that's the completion of our age-friendly community action plan. Monteith Brown Consulting, who we know all very well, is in the process that we're working with them on that project as we speak. Again, it was a grant we were successful in getting, so no cost to the municipality to do this plan. And I feel it's a very important plan, especially coming out of COVID. There's 8 very unique dimensions that make up this action plan that will, not only look at programming or items for older adults or seniors, but there's so many other dimensions like transportation and housing and so on that the plan will touch base on. And we've had some really positive stakeholder focus groups with a number of agencies like the Alzheimer's group, VON, our county partners, et cetera, and a lot of good information coming from that. We're hoping to do a second re-engagement of the community. We weren't, as our survey results and the uptake from that weren't where we wanted it to be. So at the next round, we're going to be doing a little bit more of a push when we look to bring that back to the community for a second look at it. Moving to facility services, as Tiff has alluded to, we've kind of broken up the divisions a little bit. We've taken on the fire hall, the operations of the fire halls and the public operations centers, minus the water wastewater sites. So some of the highlights there, certainly we've increased building security. That's from security, whether it's security fobs or key fobs, and tightening up that key schedule. To cameras and DVRs at various sites, et cetera. So, we do have a significant issue at the moment with vandalism. We are hoping that some of these systems will help curb some of that, but it does protect our assets out in the field that are vulnerable. So it does give us some layer of protection as well. One of the projects that we're working right now is the implementation of our facility booking software. We did do research and invited 3 companies to bid on that software, and we had selected Booking. It's a number of municipalities across Canada use Booking. In our region, Strathroy Caradoc has been using it for quite some time. They're quite happy with it. It's a very affordable system, and it allows us some different options with our facility booking that we can't get now through our Keystone model. So the other good thing about Booking is the registration module that we've also purchased. So as we get into those recreational programs, we're going to need some sort of platform or mechanism to take these registrations and develop class lists, and people to go online and do that, similar to what folks would do in London with their Spectrum programming system. So we're in the implementation stage with Booking right now. There's a little bit of work, a lot of data entry, and getting the facilities and rates and things inputted. there will be a bit of a transition where we'll have some things will be in our Keystone booking system, some will be in booking until we have that hard cutoff date, which we're planning for the full launch May or June of next year when we have that hard cutoff. Community services working alongside Public Works and engineering on the asset management system and the Asset Essential database that we now have. It's a very slick system, and so we're updating our assets within that, making sure the information is correct. So we have a very strong database when it comes to our assets in our parks, and identifying playgrounds and HVAC units and facilities and all that kind of good stuff. The one thing that we really like about it is sort of their work order system. We already have a work order system, but we're transitioning to this. It's a very dynamic work order system that eventually down the line, we hope to launch it out to be a bit more public or forward facing. Right now, it's mainly internally, but perhaps down the road, that's something we will look at. Of course, another big highlight for us is the increased cleaning and sanitation of facilities, especially through COVID protocols. And as our buildings are starting to get busier, a good example of that is the Ilderton Library early on, offering more programs, at the, for kids, just means we're in there, we have to be in there more often and increase those cleaning schedules. And again, just alluding to the security on the COVID side of things, security for vaccine screening. We're hopeful at some point, that we can start to walk that back a little bit as we perhaps, optimistically come out of the pandemic. However, for now, we do have monies allocated for security to help with that issue. So those are the highlights for community services. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Council, any questions for Scott presentation? Here.
To you, Madam Mayor, to Scott. One of the things listed is a labor shortage, specifically in the facility maintenance department. Do you see that correctly yourself, as you want to hold the door, or is it going to be an ongoing problem?
Through the mayor, I think it's going to be a problem for the next little while anyways. And it's not just us. I think, we belong to various job boards. We've posted jobs on for example, the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association. There's a number of jobs being posted on those boards. And so we know others in our industry are struggling as well to find that labor in that particular area. So I think it will be for the next little while. Certainly recently, some of the positions that we've posted and tried to hire for has been a bit of a struggle. So hopefully that corrects itself in the future, but I think we're in it for the next little while anyways.
Thank you. What else? Okay, I don't see anyone else, Scott. Thank you for that presentation, and I'll look to Rob then to take us to transportation, environmental, and fleet.
Thank you, Mayor.
So good evening, everyone. Through Madam Mayor, I'm happy to walk through the Public Works and Transportation Department. So we're going to start with the water, wastewater, so the environmental services. So this does include the waste management component for the municipality as well. So the first line item here identifies the net operating cost increase of just under $26,000. That's about 8.6%. So that actually represents the cost of the waste management only. So that's the impact of the levy, because the other three, the water, wastewater, and stormwater, are all rate funded. So they do not have an impact to the levy. So this year, I think it was just recently in November, we brought the report regarding the water, wastewater, and stormwater charges. Just a reminder that the water rates are not changing in 2022, but the wastewater and stormwater charges are going up 2%. So that's as a result. The no increase for the water was as a result of the long-range financial plan that we undertook in 2021, looking at a 10-year horizon, forecasting out revenues and expenses. Now we have certainly seen this year some increases in chemical prices and parts and delays in getting parts, just like I think it has been kind of seen across the board. So we'll have to see what 2022 brings for increases in those chemical costs. So right now we have carried a inflationary cost going forward, to see whether or not it's sufficient to what we see in the market. As far as the water wastewater side, we have about 22 different facilities on the water wastewater, and then 5 stormwater facilities that we maintain, with 7 operators and a manager. Right now we have, in 2021, we've continued to look at continuous improvement for both effluent improvements and operational efficiencies within the facilities. So we've been undertaking some studies on that front. In 2021, we did budget for master servicing plan components for the water, wastewater, and stormwater, as well as that would be in a comprehensive plan with transportation. So that's carrying forward to 2022. Again, the intent was to come on the heels of the official plan. So the intent is to undertake that study in 2022, which will help us navigate the future growth of the municipality from a servicing perspective. And you go next slide, Tiffany. So this is now looking at the transportation division of Public Works. So we actually decreased the budget for 2022 is actually showing a decrease in the operating cost of just around $73,000. So in 2022, again, we're undertaking an update to the road needs study, which was last done in 2019. Going forward, the intent is to have in offsetting years is to have a road needs study and then a structure study, so that the costs are kind of balanced off year to year. In 2022, again, we're going to have the transportation servicing master plan, which will be with the other 3 services, and we'll also wrap waste management into that as well. But waste management is covered off through the water recycling. And sorry, and I guess the one thing I did want to just touch on that I did overlook, and going back to the waste management and that increase on the levy, although we're showing an increase this year, we're not increasing the bin fees for 2022. And the rationale behind that was because we know there's a change coming with the recycling costs, because there's going to be a transition coming. The period is between 2022 and 2025, where the bulk of those costs are put back to the producers for the cost of the recycling. So we didn't want to increase the bin fees only to have to pull them back in a couple of years. So that's why that decision was made. So when it comes to transportation, we try to do as much work in-house as we can, and we have expanded on that. One of the things that we did in 2021 was the purchase of the bucket truck for taking down larger trees that we've had to previously contract in the past. It's worked out really well. Staff have liked it. It's given us the opportunity to do things in-house that we haven't done before. We also can use it for other maintenance activities, as far as putting up signs on poles or changing street lights. We also brought in-house line painting for stop signs, stop bars. Center line painting is still done by the county under contract through them. And there are still a number of things like hauling materials and restoration work where it sometimes makes sense to go to a site contractor, just because we don't have the right size equipment to undertake it efficiently. But another good example of something that we changed this year was the purchase of an excavator, changing out a backhoe that we had previously, larger excavator. We've been able to utilize it on projects such as the Neck Road project, again, instead of outsourcing or renting equipment. So that's been successful. Tiffany, you can flip next slide. Thank you. So some of the other things that we do every year that are not really a change, but just to kind of highlight them, is that we do loose top resurfacing. That is contractor work as far as the hauling of the material. We look after the grading and dust control of all the gravel roads, and that makes up nearly about half of our roads at about 280 kilometers. We also undertake the hard top patching and shoulder maintenance of all our roads, and tar and chipping, which is a capital project now, but it kind of falls in line with that operations and maintenance activity. So we tar and chip about 30 kilometers a year as well. We have applied the calcium dust control once per year. And we try to time that at the right time of year to try to get, I guess, the biggest bang for our buck as far as the time of the application. But by the end of the summer, certainly its effectiveness has gone. Traffic calming. So we did implement some temporary speed cushions in 2021. And say with generally good feedback from the public. Some mixed feedback, and so they've been taken out for the winter. But the intent again is to go back, look at areas and start implementing them where they make sense. We've undertaken a lot of speed monitoring again this year with the purchase of a second radar sign and also a pole mounted sign. We've installed a couple of monitoring devices on Highbury Avenue as well that are permanent post mount devices. So the intent is to continue with that Vision Zero campaign. Oops. And then, of course, well-timed, we have winter patrols and snow plowing. Again, this is not a change from every year, but one thing that I guess has changed significantly going into 2022 is that we renegotiated our salt contract for a multi-year contract. Previously, we had been in an agreement, a multi-year agreement, where we were increasing costs simply by CPI every year. Now we had to negotiate a new contract, so there was a significant increase in the cost of salt. I think it was about a 9% per ton increase. So that's significant for our costs going into 2022. Our sand supply comes from our pit, so there's really no change there. And then, of course, just fuel, as Tiffany touched on earlier, we've all seen fuel prices increase. I guess that's kind of a good segue into the next slide, Tiffany, with fleet. So with fleet, we see a net operating cost decrease again. We've tightened up some of our budgets, so we've decreased by about $50,000. And it might seem a little bit counterintuitive given the cost of fuel, but when we did our budgeting for 2021, we had actually hedged that fuel prices, oil prices and fuel prices would increase in 2021. So we were actually in a pretty good position to carry those budgets forward for 2022. Now, of course, if we end up with $2 per liter gas, that's not something that we have built into our budget, but hopefully that does not happen. And then insurance, I think Tiffany highlighted this earlier too, that insurance is a major impact across the board. You can see it's nearly $270,000 overall. So then we're also seeing longer lead time for equipment and parts, and higher prices aren't terrible on parts yet, but tires certainly have been impacted, or anything that's been that relies on the use of oil in its production. And I guess at that point, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you for that. Council, are there questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rob, I'm just looking here, page 56, the last page you're on there, page before that, says your insurance has increased 20% or $269,000. I just follow on the blue book, it's saying an increase of 20% or $20,000. Just clarify whether it's a misprint or whether I'm not reading it right.
So through you, Mayor DeVete, that would actually be me. Let me check into the insurance increase. I believe this is a typo on this this slide, but I will clarify and ensure that we have the exact amount clarified to council.
Okay, thanks, Tiffany.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, yes, Councilor Case.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Rob, I'm curious in the reading in the big book, whereabouts is the Kamoka Drain one swim pump?
Yeah, so that's the project that's intended to convert the the old aggregate pit at 22447 Kamoka Road into a municipal pond. So the pond that's located just south of Tim Hortons.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's okay. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, I'll pass it over to Arnie now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Through the Mayor, I'm here today, happy to present Building and Bylaw Enforcement Department's updates for 2022. A couple highlights for Building Division. We do remain as a self-funded department, funded entirely by building permit fees. So Building Division's budget will not impact the tax levy going forward. We do, however, contribute to the municipality in that when our fees were studied about 5 years ago, it was agreed that Building Division will actually pay the municipality for costs incurred, administration and office costs of approximately $40,000 a year. So we will make those transfers again next year as we have done in the previous years. Next slide, Tiff. Some highlights for next year. We are ongoing with our shared service agreement with 4 other municipalities. This is done as a cost recovery model and is working well. We also, as Tiff mentioned, we are bringing back our co-op student next year. It's a real benefit to the student and also to Building Division, as they would help with small applications for permits such as decks and pools and sheds. That way we can expedite those sort of applications, and it really does help out staff. We also do have a budget for continuing education with our staff. There's always courses that we take to upgrade our qualifications, and so we do budget for that each year, about $2,000 to $3,000 per staff. With regards to bylaw enforcement, so traditionally we've budgeted a significant portion of the bylaw enforcement officers' wages and expenses to Building Division. So what you see, this 28,000 increase, is really a reallocation of that position's costs from Building Division to where the work is actually performed. So we thought it would be best reflected in the bylaw enforcement budget rather than Building Division budget to reflect the true use of that person. We do expect the revenues to remain similar to what we've seen this year in the department, primarily from parking ticket revenue and offense notices that we issue. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Great. Is there a question for Arnie? I don't see anything, Arnie. Thank you very much for that presentation. And I think it's back.
So just to clarify for the insurance increases, I did review the book. It's $220,080. So the numbers were off. I will look into it, how that occurred, but I do apologize, but it's around 220,000, that 20%. So capital budget highlights, we have gone through this in more detail in November when we presented the capital budget. So I am just going to flip through this. You will see the total 5-year plan being $138 million. This is a significant investment into our capital and a significant number. So it is something that we will continue to refine every single year. I am looking forward to doing a multi-year budget soon. It might not be next year with the first year of new council and with no reassessment, but we will see. We are presenting a very, I would say this is a very a good outline of our asset management plan, our development charges in this 5-year capital plan. So the numbers are pretty realistic. This is how it's recommended by department, and then just in a nice graph form, and then how it's being funded, with the majority being funded by reserve funds. So at this time, does any member of council have any questions on the capital budget that they'd like to ask before we move ahead?
I don't see any hands. Oh,
Sure.
Excuse me, this is related to
Councilor Schiffman, she's so kind as to thank you so much. We don't get any new one for Christmas.
Hey, turn there. This is related to the capital budget, but on the debt capacity, can I ask you about that right now?
Sure.
So when I was looking at the 2021, and I think it's been alluded to, the needs and wants. So the debt capacity as it stands right now is, as you mentioned, like 10 point something. And if these two other projects come online this year, which would be Coca Drain and the Old River Road, are both of those needs? Like I'm sure the drain is for sure. The adjustments to Old River Road, is that a need or what? You know?
So through Mayor David, I do believe that it is a need. However, I know that our Director of Public Works and Engineering will be looking at different options when it comes to that. And so at this point, the costs are just estimates and more information will be coming forward to council with respect to that specific project. And I would, because of the value of both, council will be seeing them again. But my understanding is yes, both would fall under the need category. However, our Director of Public Works and Engineering could provide more information if needed.
Okay, so then the projection in the future, if we add the ocean recreation facility, so that's out there on the projections, but it's, I don't know that it's been approved or anything at this point, but this is a 40-year project, which would put us over the top of our existing capacity limit. And I guess I would question if we're suggesting that an arena is generally only good for 50 years, and this is 40 years out, I'm just a little bit concerned. I know this is something that we're not dealing with tonight exactly, but it's still on the 5-year plan. And I'm just a little bit concerned that, you know, like we're going to spend a lot of money that we get more of it than 40 years or 50 years.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor DeVete, with respect to the Ilderton Arena and say revamping that arena, I know that there was a study done, it might have been when I first started or pre-me, where they did discuss the options of rehabilitating the building versus building new. And I believe that the option that one was building new. However, it is still something that does need to be reviewed by council. My intention with this is I know that there's been multiple grant applications that have been applied for on this project. And even if the grant were successful, there's a portion that would be paid for by the tax base. So this is worst case scenario in the presentation with respect to the full amount being debt financed. However, I do want to be very open and transparent with this on what the costs are and what the cost could be for the taxpayers with the increase in the levy in order to even pay for the debt payments. So these are one of the items that, although it's noted in asset management, it's not in detail in asset management. So it's not included in that $1 million additional every year for the arena because the asset management plan has more of those rehabilitation costs in it rather than an entire new rebuild. I do understand that new rebuild would be like say a new design. There's different things that are being looked at. But at this point, yes, it does push us over what our debt capacity would be for our own source revenues. However, our own source revenues during that time could also increase it, which will kind of balance that out with the formula. But my intention here is to make sure that this information gets out. So I do want to make those, when council are making those large decisions, the financial piece is extremely important. So highlighting it in the budget is an effort to just be open and transparent as much as possible and give council a clear picture when it comes to what could happen.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Is there anyone else?
Just, this council, with a question of clarification. Under the water and stormwater, there's a coastal road realignment. I'm just not understanding that. I thought you just clarify that for me.
So through you, Mayor DeVete, so the Coldstream Road realignment comes into play with respect to the Glennon Drive, the widening, the 2 lanes, the project that's happening more at the county level. But there are portions that would have to do with like the stormwater and other aspects that are Middlesex Center costs. So we do have a breakdown from the county engineer on what those would be. And that's kind of where they would lie within our budgets and services. Rob, our Director of Public Works and Engineering, could provide more of that background and those details, and we will. We do actually have it in our Quest system. I just don't have it up on the screen in front of me. However, we can get that for you, and to make sure that information is out there and what it entails in its entirety.
Just to follow up on the London Drive, the proposal that's going to go from 2 lane to 4 lane, that being a county road, would be that's money for us. I'm having trouble understanding if it's a county road and the county is, you say a road, why are we being assessed so much to widen that road?
So through you, Mayor DeVete, I do not disagree. It is a county road. However, the municipality is required to pay for our portions. I believe the road itself is county responsibility, and anything on the other side of it, say sidewalks, streetlights, water, wastewater, stormwater, would be the municipal portion. But I know our Director of Public Works just popped on, and so if he would like to provide any more additional details on that. So Rob, I'm not sure if you heard me speaking, but hopefully you can kind of jump in there.
Yeah, I missed a little bit of it, Tiffany, just when it switched over. But I think the question was regarding our responsibility for costs along Glendon Drive. Is that? Okay, so yes, it's a county road, but we're responsible for what's, I guess, viewed as municipal costs. So it's essentially anything behind the curb, anything that's pedestrian related, which is, you know, sidewalk, pathways, street lighting, any multi-use pathways. So actually, so next week at council's meeting, we actually have, so I guess it's well timed, we have a report coming to council that identifies the responsibility split between the county and the lower tiers. It's something that's been actually in place since 1998 is when the policy was, but we're bringing it as an information report to council just so everybody's aware of that identification of responsibilities.
Go ahead, Councillor Chase.
You Madam Mayor to Rob, but so isn't both the Coldstream and the River Road that Deputy Mayor Brent mentioned, that has to do with the Glendon Drive widening as well, correct?
Yes. So, well, yes, partly. So they were both included in the Glendon Drive EA that was undertaken by the county, and that was done in cooperation with Middlesex Center. So Coldstream Road realignment is completely as a result of the Glendon Drive EA. It's required due to the roundabout that's going to go where the 5 corners is right now, so at Vanek and Glendon Drive. Once that roundabout, or in order for that roundabout to be completed with only 4 legs, Coldstream Road needs to be realigned. So the EA did include a preliminary alignment for Coldstream Road that heads west and comes out at the existing intersection, and the road names escape me at the moment, but it'll come down to Glendon Drive at the existing intersection. It'll essentially divide the property that's there in 2. So the details on that are still being worked out, while Stantec is working on the design of the roundabout for the county. The Old River Road reconstruction, so it was all included in the Glendon Drive EA. The part that is really necessary as a result of the EA is the intersection work at Old River Road and Glendon Drive. The rest of Old River Road was wrapped into that EA, but I wouldn't say it's required because of Glendon Drive. There are some other issues with Old River Road that require improvements, just going back to slope issues that have been there for 40 years.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, Rob, the River Road items that are mentioned in the budget relate to the municipal portion.
That's correct. Yep.
Which is the boat-based stabilization. Okay. Is there anything else for Rob? I don't see anything. I think Tiffany's going to do capital highlights now.
Through you, Mayor DeVete, it's just the budget summary. So we are at the end of the presentation. I know we are all excited. It's been a long night. So budget summary and looking ahead. Here you will see the increase in municipal service costs for 2022 by service area. So it balances of where we're the total amount for the levy increase. So the total amount levy increase, as mentioned before, was that $1,289,806. Ties right into our summary. So 6.39% tax levy increase, 2.76% tax rate increase, and the operating capital project costs are listed below, as long as along with our transfers to and from reserve funds. And a nice little picture here. So when you're looking at your municipal tax rate, residential impact, farm impact. So we do not have any reassessments. So the average assessment has stayed the same, and the increase is only due to the tax rate increase. So this is on an assessment of $400,000 for a house. It will increase by $68 for the residential and $43 for a farm. Outstanding list. So at the end of the budget, what we have outstanding is the announcement of the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund funding for 2022. The province has announced that there will be funding. And actually today we did receive information on this. So this will be included in a council report in the new year. And we are waiting on the province to announce this information out. Additionally, federal and provincial grant opportunities, once they're announced, and staff will continue to apply for them. These are not included in the budget, as we do not know what they are, although council reports will be forthcoming, as they normally are throughout the year as these opportunities arise. Continuous improvement of the budget. This is something that we did discuss during the capital presentation, and I believe that the 2022 budget and the documents that you're seeing in front of you have come a long way since 2021, or when I started doing this at Middlesex Center in 2016. And so I'm really excited to see the alignment with a lot of our plans. You'll see a lot more of this with the budget booklet for 2022, but aligning with our asset management plan, those financing strategies, our development charges, looking at those cash flows, and that strategic plan that I've mentioned a few times tonight. We still have a little bit to go. We would like to align the asset management plan for wastewater and stormwater into our budget requirements and get better information on this so that we have those set increases that the public can really rely on. And I will be working on a financial strategy and a financial policy in 2022. This is something that I'll give council some more information on how we make these decisions to be presented to council for their consideration. And this would be hopefully within quarter 1 or quarter 2 of 2022. So we have some exciting things coming forth. At this point, I will open it up for questions, and this is the end of our 2022 budget discussion.
Okay, council, one more time. Is there anything else you'd like to ask about or get clarification on? I know you can go to staff at any time if something does pop into your mind. So before I end off, Tiffany, I just want to thank you, the senior management team, the other staff members and council members who worked on this budget. See, it's like 6 months worth of work here. I also want to say thank you to the members of the public. I know we worked very hard to engage members of the public and to give everyone opportunities to contribute and provide input. So I know you find that useful yourselves, but what I do want to mention all of the people who contributed to making this document hopefully more relevant to everyone in our communities. The new work that you've done on the budget book is terribly impressive. I'm just blown away by all of the work that you've done here to put it together in one binder that's integrated. And I mean, you've already outlined the improvements for next year. You're absolutely right. In the 10 years that I've been around, the documentation that we get, the detail we get, the supporting foundational master plans and assessments and research and stats and everything. It's really come a long way to making things understandable and transparent, and our ability to be accountable to the public has been really improved. So I think I speak for everyone around the horseshoe here that just keep doing what you're doing and keep making it easier for people to understand and for them to comment on where to go and how to go, because as everyone understands how the pieces fit together, I think it's easier to come to decisions and to make choices about what we'd like to see in our municipality. So thank you again to all of you. And we do have a recommendation before us, that report CPS 57 2021 budget 2022 presentation and draft booklet be received, and that the clerk be directed to prepare the necessary bylaws Do we have a mover, please? Councillor Shipley and Councillor Arts, all in favor? And that is carried. We can now move to correspondence. We have item 7.1, we receive for information. Is there a mover for that? And a seconder, please? Councillor Cates and Councillor Covenant, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. We do have 2 bylaws as well tonight. Oh, sorry, is there any other business that anyone wanted to raise? I don't see anything, so we can move to bylaws then. We have a motion that bylaws 2021 number 112 and 113 be adopted as printed. We have a mover, please, and a second. Councillor Duckman and Councillor Arts, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And now we need a motion for adjournment. It is that council for the Middlesex Center adjourns 7:25. Thank you, Clerk. PM, Brewer, Councillor Cates, Deputy Mayor Brennan, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next week.